Hello, you're watching Theater Tips and Tricks for Ministry. My name is Jocelyn, and this series is all about helping you discover techniques from the performing arts that can help you be more effective in your church or ministry program. Whether you're new to the arts or you've had years of experience on stage and behind the scenes, whatever your budget and whatever your overall mission, we're here to help you step up your artistry and bring the good news of Jesus to life like you've never imagined. Let's go! Have you ever fallen asleep in church? Ever listened to someone and wondered what they're talking about in the first place? Well, as any kind of speaker, you probably wrestle with the question, how do I keep my audience engaged in what I'm saying? Well, here, we have some tricks to help you connect with and hold on to your audience. Let's look at part 1. All good theater requires mystery and suspense. When you create suspense, your audience wants to know what happens next. You have them hooked until all their questions are answered. Therefore, it's important to ask questions in your sermon to hook your audience's interest right off the bat.
As I'm preparing to give a message, I have to ask myself, what do I expect from my audience today? I have to think about their demographics, what terminology and historical references they will understand, and do they trust me and believe what I'm saying? If I'm starting off a message and I want to get them really interested and curious about what I'm saying, I ask a question, and then another question. Don't give the answer right away, but give them some space to relate or to laugh if they've been there, done that. Relating with your audience is about asking the questions they have before they do.
Can you show us an example of how you would hook your audience with the message you started in tip 1?
Yes, I can. Let's go.
Yay!
Have you ever been accused of hanging out with the wrong crowd? Or maybe have been in the crowd that no one wanted to be around? Well, here in Luke 15, Jesus is hanging around with the local tax collectors and the sinners. But the Pharisees, the wise guys, the ones who are supposed to uphold the law, are appalled that Jesus would even have the nerve to hang out with these people. Well, in response to the Pharisees' muttering, Jesus asked them some questions. He asked them, if you had 100 sheep and lost one, if you were a decent human being, wouldn't you go out and search and rejoice that you found it? You guys, for example, if you lost your paycheck or your pocketbook, or even $1, wouldn't you be searching like crazy until you found it?
Were you intrigued by the questions he asked? He even paraphrased some of the passage so it was still recognizable as Jesus' words, asking indirect questions, but had some modern words as well. Now, let's look at part 2, what not to do if your goal is to engage your audience.
Well, I'm assuming you've all read this story before, and you all understand the meaning about what Jesus was trying to do when he told these parables. So, I'm going to skip around a bit and give you some obscure information about that disciple that I wrote a 60-page paper on in seminary.
Okay, first thing to avoid in any message, don't ever assume that your audience already agrees, believes, or cares about what you're saying just yet. It's good to acknowledge that they come from different backgrounds with different levels of understanding and beliefs. Secondly, don't give your audience a bunch of details that are irrelevant to your overall objective. If you don't give them space to process or react to what you're saying, it's going to turn them off from connecting with you. It's like pausing for applause or laughter in a show. If you don't give the audience space to, they won't. In many cases, you're preaching to a skeptical crowd. You're like the underdog playing an away game against the wind. You have to make the case for why they should believe you and act on what you're saying. Now that we're clear on what not to do, let's look at part 3, keeping your audience hooked through the rest of the message.
One trick that I encourage is to tap into your audience's different learning styles. Some people learn better by seeing things, like pictures or PowerPoint outlines. Some learn better by hearing or speaking, like listening to a song or repeating important words or phrases out loud. Others learn better by physically doing something, making a craft, lifting their hands, or writing it down. All of these are not always possible in every sermon you give, but you can use these methods to connect with different audience members and make them think. In fact, in tip number 3, you'll see another kind of illustration that involves all 3 of those areas: drama. Now, as you ask and answer these questions you pose, another trick is to check how they're following you by asking them to respond.
Can I get an amen?
Amen. Throughout your message, go back to the beginning and reiterate key points. Restating thoughts from your introduction that helped you make those first connections allows your audience to reflect and make connections for themselves. Their first answer to the question may change as you reveal the rest of the message.
The Professor Haddon Robinson made the statement, ask an amateur to speak and they say, what do I talk about? Ask a professional to speak and they say, who's my audience? Every audience is different, but you can find some common ground with everyone by asking and answering questions and providing a variety of ways to engage mind, body, and heart. These are some tips to get you started in engaging your audiences when you speak. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for tip number 3.